and a special musical remembrance from Marshall and Amy.
Bring to you my friend, Mr. John Mandala. I met John Mandala when he called me one day. I had an article, some of you might know that I write articles in the newspaper, and I had written an article about crime in police and prisons and things like that. And as I sometimes do, I'll get a contact from somebody in the reading world, and I got a contact by a guy named John Mandala. And he said, you know, I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you more. I like the way you wrote your article, and you know, there's a lot of things that go on in prison that people don't know about, and the problems that results in prison. So I said, sure. So we met at Nicky's. Everybody here know where Nicky's is? All right, that was a hangout for John, and I've been there plenty of times. So we met at Nicky's, and we had a little breakfast, and I got to know John. Well, that was our first meeting. He explained to me what his background was and how he had spent 20 years in prison and all of that went on. One thing I did establish is that John did not live a life of crime. He was not a career criminal. It was a one-time incident that does happen. I was in homicide for 16 years. I was in charge of CSI for 5 years. I saw lots of these kinds of things in my career. I can tell you there are people who are criminals, and there are people who are not criminals but do something wrong. And John is one of those. And since then, I've come to know him very well, and we've become good friends. I admire John for a number of reasons, one of which is his impeccable integrity. So without gushing any further, I'd like to bring up John Mandala.
Good morning. Good morning. I've been sitting there for a lot of days over the last year, and it's kind of ironic. But 1 year ago today, we had the first Alternative to Violence Project workshop down in the coffee house. And Marshall was there, marvelous Marshall, and Andy was there, awesome Andy, and Alan was there, adventurous Alan. You see, we give each one of us, when we do the workshop, an adjective name that has something to say about the person. And so my name, which I picked some 25 years ago, is just John. And that's all I've seen myself as just John. But I had a lady that one time said, "You don't know what you're saying," because just John is a lot more than just John. And so the AVP program, which many of you have heard about, and there's some brochures and different things on the table over there, is all about teaching people and building community. And like I say, ironically, it was a year ago this weekend, the Martin Luther King weekend, that we had our first workshop, and it was through the graces of the organization and through Andy's help, and through everybody's help. And so today, my topic is, can anything good come out of prison? AVP actually came out of prison. It was started on the result and the direction of one of the most disastrous riots in our prison system, which was at Attica. It's been a blemish for a long time, and just last year I talked to the Commissioner of Corrections and I asked him, could you please close Attica, which still has the highest amount of lawsuits, which still has the most dreary place that you could walk into. Close it and make it into a museum. End the legacy of Attica being a place of death, and make it a place of life, for people to understand how we have changed. And so, can anything good come out of prison? We talk about Martin Luther King weekend. Martin Luther King, one of the most important papers that he wrote was a letter from the Birmingham jail. It carried such weight in it, and at the very end of it he apologized for it being too long. But he had a lot to say. He had a lot of time to think. Nelson Mandela had 27 years to think. And he came out and he became president. How could that happen? How could people who have been put into some of the hardest places in our society come to be civil rights leaders? Come to be something of history that can never be changed? Prison does something to you. It makes you think about who you are, what you are, where you have been, where you are going. There are so many things. Who cares? How many of you really care? Can anything good come out of prison? The bottom line is, do we care about 2.3 million people being in there right now? Do we care about 500,000 coming home every year? Do we care about a 75% recidivism rate? Do we care about $60 billion to run the prison system? Do we really care about how people are going to come home? Do we feel safer because we have so many people in prison? Dostoevsky said, You can judge a society by looking at the people and the way your prisons are run. I was one of the lucky ones. I committed a very serious crime, a manslaughter. I took the life of another human being, which I carry with me for the rest of my life. I've paid the debt for society. I've served 20 years in prison. So now everything is okay, right? Nothing is okay. Because in my heart, I carry that with me until I am in my grave. And yet, the sister of the woman whose life I took wrote me a letter. And she said, I forgive you. I have made mistakes in my life, and I have been forgiven. If you ask the universe will forgive you. The hardest thing that you will have to do is forgive yourself. And so I was sitting in a cell with 2 bunks. And I was on the bottom bunk, and there was a guy on the top bunk, and he was dying of AIDS. It was 1986. And I was trying to figure out ways that I could die. And he was trying to figure out ways how he could survive. And then the officer gave me a letter. And I looked at it, and I smelled it, and I was afraid to open it because it was from the sister of the woman whose life I had taken. I had many thoughts then. Throw it away. What does it say inside? It can only be negative. But I opened it. And I sat there, and all of a sudden, it was like 2.5 or 3 hours had gone by, and I was still sitting there. And the officer said, "Lights out." And I realized that for 3 hours, I was sitting on that bunk. And I was trying to figure out how this person could forgive me. How was it possible? To this day, I don't know. But this person had a lot of guts. And they came to visit me. And from that moment on, I had hope. From that moment on, I believed that I could do something with my life. And each day, I took that into consideration. And so, I embarked on a path of trying to understand who I was. And we don't talk a lot about our feelings. But many years ago, I wrote a book. And I want to say there's some books over there on the table. There's some handouts. There's some different things. Anybody at any time can call me. And the reason I say that is I earned a bachelor's degree in psychology while I was in prison. I became a certified optician. So I could make my own glasses. And then a man offered me to pay for my master's degree. A gentleman by the name of Bill Weber, a huge man in stature. But he gave me a price that was unbelievable. He said, "You are mine for the rest of your life, and you will try and do good, as I have done good to you." Because one of the things that I read was, those who are forgiven much, of them much is required. And so in 1996, when the United States government eliminated college programs from all penitentiaries, prisons in the United States, I went to Bill Weber and I said, "Bill, if there are no more people with bachelor's degrees, what good would the master's program be?" And he said, "Well, fix it, John." And so I was in prison at a time when the pendulum of change was ripe. And I became involved with a group of people that were trying to do positive things. And we had a copy machine project, and you can't believe some of the obstacles. We had a guy give us a copy machine that had 600,000 copies on it. And they brought it to the law library, and in the law library you could make a copy for 10 cents. At that time it was a nickel, actually. But the machine, on every Saturday, it was so old, it had chains in it. And we couldn't get any oil. So in the commissary where you can buy small things, you can buy octopus. And it comes in oil. Well, I used to treat the machine with octopus oil every week. And it stayed running for another 150,000 copies until we had raised enough money to buy a new machine. Saved enough money, because the purpose of that organization was to save money for education. And we took $5,000 that prisoners had paid to make copies over a period of 10 years. And we started a college program that was privately funded. And today, it's now in 5 different prisons. Warren Buffett gives us 1 share of Class A stock every year. And it's changing lives of people that are inside. Statistically speaking, if you have a high school education and you go to prison, when you come out, your chances of going back are 65%. If you have a college degree, your chances of going back drop down to 30%. If you have a master's degree, they drop down between 0 and 5%. So why would we eliminate higher education from our prison system? I'll give you a good question. Why do we have walls around prisons? Is it to keep people in, or is it to keep people out? We really don't want to know what's going on inside our prison. Do we do anything with the people that are there? And so there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of things that we need to know. And the real question for me is I've been given an opportunity to make some changes. Because change is the only thing that remains the same. And so I became part of an organization called Breathing Space, and some of you have found the literature on the chair. Breathing Space is a program that helps people who are coming back from wars, helps people that are coming out of prison, helps homeless people, helps people move on with their life. And it does that through hope and purpose. And so I want to share something with you that's become very important for me. Some of you might recognize what this is. It's a C-beam. What's interesting about sea beans is they're all different shapes. They all come in very, very different shapes, different sizes, just like people. And so this sea bean has floated in the ocean for thousands and thousands of miles. Some of them float for 100 years. And then they land on shore. And the hope of the sea bean is to be broken open. Because if it breaks open and it is given the right nourishment, it blossoms into a beautiful tree. And it knows what to do. Because inside this, there is it. Anybody know what it is? I don't know either. It's intelligence, because it knows what to do. People get broken open also. I was broken open 27 years ago, but I was given hope. And I was given the right nourishment, and I was given things that I needed to grow. And so today, 27 years later, I have been nourished in a way to see that we are all connected together. We all look different, but we're all connected together. We all have that it, whatever it is. And so how do we, as a community, begin to see some of the things that need to be done in our community and be able to reach out and shake a hand and say, how can I help? ABP and Breathing Space started in New York, and we have 32 acres in the Catskill Mountains of New York, and we bring people from the inner city, and we let them chop trees, and we let them skip rocks on the river, things that they have never done. Well, I'm here to tell you there's Breathing Space in Florida. And Breathing Space in Florida, our first entrepreneurial venture, is a little food stand down the road called Chef John's Place. I wear many hats. I'm Chef John. But the amazing thing is that Chef John's Place is helping to feed people that are living out in the woods. They can come there for a meal each day because we believe in giving a hand up, not a hand out. People have to work to eat. And so if you can work, then you can work to eat. And so we give people purpose. I have one guy that does nothing but chop wood, fills up a water tank, and mops the floor. And he worked for one man for 22 years. And then the guy died. And he's been living out in the woods for 2 years in a tent. But he said to me a week before Christmas, I have a reason to get up now every day. How do we, as people, come together and really look at what we have? Last week, Beth, our Reverend, gave us a small parable about the rabbi in the woods. And I thought that was really a great little parable. And there's also a parable that I've heard. You know, we can take what we're given and we can look at it as opportunity. Or we can become stagnant. And when we become stagnant in our thinking, then we can no longer move forward. You know, today I was looking at the program, and I just couldn't help but read what it says on the back. We welcome all who long for a free and open atmosphere in which to search for their own faith, expand their spiritual horizons, or find new ways to interact with the world in which they live. We welcome diversity of belief and lifestyle because everyone deserves the stimulation of an intellectually active, emotionally supportive, and socially conscious community. My question to you: how do we help each other to help make sure that people have hope? Questions and answers as is in the normal style of Unitarian Universal.
Hey, John,
Yes?
why don't you tell them when you got out of prison, how many job applications and how many resumes, and what the result of that was with your master's and your bachelor's degree?
The first couple weeks I was home, and let me say this, when I first got home, when I first got out, I was on the next plane to come to Florida to take care of my mom. My mom was sick. And so for 3 years I took care of my mom, and I guess not getting a job was a blessing because I was there for her. And you know, I have to put this in there, hospice, which is probably one of the most amazing organizations, is how I met my wife. She works for hospice. She came to take care of my mother, and my mother and my wife used to be in the bathroom laughing. And my mother would look like a wet rat with her hair all wet, and she just couldn't get enough of hospice. And so I went to 19